Welcome to this presentation of array in C#. My name is Dr. Bishwajit Panja. I'm your instructor. If you have questions about any of information covered in this presentation, please use the question and comment box located on gogo.com. What is an array? Array is used to store data items. Now the items need to be of same data type. For example, in an array, if you're storing integer numbers, all the numbers have to be integer. Okay. Similarly, in an array, if we are trying to store characters, all of them are needing to be characters. Data items can be accessed using array name and index. So every time we create an array, we have to provide that array a name. Then we store items in the array. If we want to store the items from the array, we use the array name, then within bracket the index, so that from that array that particular item would be accessed. Creation of an array, can create array like this, int open bracket close bracket scores. So we are trying to create an array named scores, which is going to store integer values. Here is another way. Scores equals new int 20. Okay, so this one means we are trying to create an array named scores, which is of size 20 and which can store integer values. To create dynamic array, new operator is used in object-oriented programming. Now there is a difference between a static array and dynamic array. Static array is when you create an array with predefined size. The size may not be changed later on. So if we are creating an array with size, let's say 15, then later on we will not be able to change the size of 15 to 20. So the size of the array is fixed. It's a static array. Now in dynamic array, dynamic memory allocation is used to create array. So that means if we want, we can increase the size of the array. Okay, so for dynamic array, memory which is in the heap is used to create the array. Now in terms of the array index, index of an array starts at 0. Now the index is provided with this open bracket and close bracket. So as I have said, when we are trying to access the elements from an array, we need to provide the name of the array and then within bracket the index. Now if we have an array of size 20, the starting index would be 0. So that means the starting index of an array is always 0 and the ending index would be 19 if the array size is 20. Now values can be stored in an array using the array name and index as well. So that means we can access the elements from an array using the array name and index of the particular shell, or we can store elements in the array using array name and index as well. So in this example here, we say scores 0 equals 90. That means in the score array, the first element would be 90. Here is an example of an array. So we have using system namespace array. We have this class program. Okay, so class program, we have this main method. We have created the methods, or we have created the array here. Okay, so the name of the array is scores. So we say int scores new int 5. Okay, and then provided the values 79, 96 and so on. So again, using new operator, we are dynamically creating the array. So here scores new int 5, initial size is 5, and we store the numbers in that. Now if we want to access the first element in the array, we say write line scores 0, that will give us 79. It's a 79. And say write line scores 4, see 55, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth element. So 0 is the first element, that is 79. 4 is the fifth element, that is 55. So again, here we have created an array. The name of the array is scores. We have stored elements in that array, and then we have accessed the elements from the array, the 0 and 4th element. Here are some other ways of storing elements in an array. So here is one, int scores new int 5. We already have seen this one. Okay, so here we are trying to create an array named scores with initially 5 elements, and we have provided the elements. Okay, another way of doing it, int scores new int. You do not have to provide 5 in this bracket, just provide the numbers, so it will take 5 automatically. So the difference between these two examples here, the first one, we have explicitly said that our array scores stores 5 elements, and then we provided 5 elements. In the second example here, we have not explicitly said that our array scores 5 elements. Instead, we have provided the 5 elements for the scores. Another way of doing it, int scores, we can skip the new int, just directly provide the numbers. So these are three examples of creating array. First one, we say int score new int with the 5 and then the values. Second one, int scores new int without the 5, then the values, and then int scores without new int, just directly the values. So all of them work. Here is another example of an array. Okay, so our namespace is array. Name of the class is program. Okay, we have this array in the main method. So name of the array is scores. Okay, it stores 5 numbers. Now if we want to access all the elements from the array, instead of providing the array name and one index at a time, we can use a for loop. What that for loop will do is, the for loop will provide the index values. Okay, so that means using the array name and then within the bracket some variable, that variable would be used in the for loop so that the variable changes. So using the array name and a variable within bracket, we can access all the elements from the array. Okay, so for example here, the array scores stores 5 elements. It stores 5 elements. Now if we want to access all the elements from the array, we say for int I equals 0, I less than 5, I plus plus. Why I less than 5? Why not I less than or equal to 5? Because starts at 0, so it needs to go up to 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That means 5 elements, because our array is storing 5 elements at this point of time. So we do not want to go the sixth element. So if we do I less than or equals to 5, that means that it will take up to the sixth element, but we want to go up to fifth element here. So that's the reason we have and as I said, the index always starts at 0, so we have to have I equals 0, not I equals 1. Okay, if we want to access all the elements from the array. So index starts at 0, so we say int I equals 0, I less than 5, I plus plus, then console.writeLine scores I. So initially I gets 0, 1, 2, like that way. So when you run the program, we are going to see I scores 0, that is 79, scores 1, that is 96, score 2, that is 35, score 3, that is 78, score 4, that is 55, 5 elements. Okay, 0 through 4, 5 elements. Okay, so again, using a for loop, we can access all the elements of the array. So this is a good way of browsing through the array. Sometimes you want to, let's say you have an array of 50 students, you want to find the class average. So instead of getting one value at a time, you can use a for loop, which will get all the numbers, and then inside the for loop you use an accumulator, which is going to accumulate all the scores, find the summation of all the scores, and then once you go out of the loop, you can calculate the average score in the class. So array has very good applications. Okay, when there is a lot of data we need to do some processing on, so we can use an array to store the data and then use some loops to access and process the data. Now if we want to know the length of an array, okay, we can use the length method. Okay, so let's see how it works. We have this class called program, and then we have the main method. We have this array called scores, which stores 5 elements. It's a console.writeLine. The length of array is, if scores is the name of the array, dot length. So scores dot length will give us the length of the array. So in this example, what is the length of the array? The length of the array in this example is 5. Okay, 0 through 4, okay, that is 5. Okay, so now if you want to do console.writeLine scores I, like we did for the for loop. Okay, so this slide is to show you that using the length you can get the length of the array. So array name, then apply on that the length. Okay, so here scores is the name of our array. So we have scores dot length. Okay, so scores dot length will give us the length of the array. So when you run the program, say the length of the array is 5, and the remaining part is for the for loop to display all the numbers from the array which we just discussed. Now using of for each method in array, okay, let's take a look at the program first. Okay, then I'll explain what does for each method do. Okay, so we have this class program, we have this main method. In the main method we have this array called scores. So score int scores new int 5, and then we have the numbers for the scores. Okay, so 79, 96, 35, 78, 55. So if we want to find the length, as we have discussed, we can use scores.length. So the length of the array is scores.length. For each int grades in scores, for each method is similar to using a for loop. So in the for loop, we have seen that we can access all the elements from the array, or we can go to individual element in that array. For each method does the same. So here the format is a little different. Okay, we don't need any I or anything for comparison. Okay, so now the for each method here, for each int grades in scores. So grades is a new variable. We say grades, int grades in scores. Grades is a new variable. Scores is the array. Okay, so grade in scores, write line, console.writeLine, we have this placeholder grades dot toString. So grades is taking one value at a time from the scores for each. So for each method is for the whole array. So the for each method in this example has this grades variable which is going through every element in the scores array. So now the for each int grades in scores. So int grades in scores. So grades is a variable, goes through every element in the array called scores. Okay, so grades takes the first element, that is 79. Grades prints it. Okay, it prints it in order to do it in string format. We have toString method. So grades take the first element, 79, prints it. Grades takes the second element, prints it. Grades take the third element, and so on. Okay, so if you are not comfortable using the for loop, you can always use the for each method in an array to display or to do some processing on that array, processing the data. Okay, so for each method is again similar to the for loop we have just used. Now this is to search the elements in an array. Okay, we can use the for method, okay, or for loop, and then compare and see whether that particular element is there in that array or not. Okay, that particular element is there in that array or not. Okay, so let's take a look at the program here. So we have class program, we have the main method, okay, and then we have the scores, new int 79, 96, 35, 78, 55. So scores is storing this number. Okay, console.writeLine scores.length to find the length of the number. Now we want to search in the array whether a particular element is there or not. Okay, we want to ask the user, okay, enter a number, and then we take that number and then search in that array to see whether that particular number is there in the array or not. So here we say console.write, enter a score you want to search. So this is what's going to print, enter a score you want to search. Now so since it's going to read it as a string, so it's a string num1. So num1 gets that number as a string, converted to an integer, stores in num. Now take a look at the for loop. So num is the actual number which we have got from the user. Okay, now in the for loop we have for int I equals 0, I less than scores dot length I plus plus. Okay, if num equals scores I, so I 0, I equals 0, I less than scores dot length. Scores dot length is 5, right? So starts at 0, goes up to 4 because it's I less than 5, I plus plus. Now we compared this num equals scores I. So scores I is accessing one element at a time from this scores array, and then once it accesses it, then when we have num equals scores I, the comparing, and then we have an if condition here. If num equals scores I, then say item found in the array. Doesn't make sense. Okay, so in the for loop we are browsing through all the elements in the array. We start at the element 0. Okay, we start at element 0. So int I equals 0, I less than score dot length, okay, that condition needs to be true all the time in order for the for loop to execute. Then I plus plus, and then we have if num equals score size. So num is the number we have got from the user. We are trying to see if that particular number, that particular element exists in that array or not. So we have if num equal, here you see double equal sign. So double equal is comparison, right? It compares and either returns true or false. So when this is true, when this part is true, that means it has found that particular number in the array scores. Then it says item found in the array. Okay, so this program is to show you that you can ask the user to enter a number, and then you can compare with the numbers in your array to see if that particular number exists in your array or not. So this is for searching a particular number in the array. Now why do you need to do searching? Sometimes, let's say, it may not be just numbers, it might be, let's say, student's name score, student name score. So you want to search for a student, particular student. So you can do that. And also sometimes we want to return the index of the number. Because if the array is sorted, the index might be useful, saying that okay, it's the 50th student or 60th student or 50th position, 40th position in the class, or first position in the class, second position in the class. So the index will help us with that searching. I mean, index will help us to provide certain results, either it's the third best score in the class or something like that. Okay, so searching is an useful application in array. Okay, so you can do that using for loop, and then inside the for loop you have the if loop. Okay, now some other operations which can be done on array are sort and reverse. Okay, so sort, if we want to sort all the elements in an array, we can use the sort method. Okay, so if we do array dot sort scores, it will sort all the numbers in an ascending order. And if you want to reverse the elements in the array, you just say array dot reverse. So these are some of the methods which are useful. As I was telling you, that let's say we want to sort all the numbers in the array, and then we want to find out who has received the second best scores in the class. So we first sort them, and then do the searching, and then return the index to find out who has got the second best or third best score in the class. So far we are working with the one-dimensional array. In one-dimensional array we have just one row. Okay, now think about an array which is of table format, which has row and column. Okay, like name, C# score, C++ score. Okay, so here name Bob, Tom, John. So Bob C# score, that is, this is 00, 01, 10, 11, 20, 21. Okay, so that means we can store in a table kind of format. I mean, when we are creating the array, it might not look like as a table, but the way it's storing the values is in a table format. Okay, so the first cell would be 00, because 0th row, 0th column. Same row would be 0 row, 1 column. Okay, in the second row it would be 1 row, 0 column, and this one would be 1 row, 1 column. Okay, so row comma column. Okay, so that means whenever you are using multi-dimensional array, for storing the numbers you have to have two indexes, right? Not just not just one, because in one-dimensional array you use just one index, but for two-dimensional array we have to make sure that we have the row information as well as the column information. So using the row information and column information, we can store elements in the array, or we can retrieve elements from the array. So that means we have to have the row as well as the column information. Okay, so two indexes required, I and j. Okay, now also we have seen some examples, like when we are trying to access the elements from the array, we use for loop. In the for loop we had just one for loop, okay, with I equals 0, I less than 10, or I less than length, I plus plus. Now if you want to access the elements, all the elements in a from a two-dimensional array, you have to have a for loop inside another for loop. So outside for loop will do for row, inside for loop go for column. So like first row or 0th row, then inside for loop will do 0 column, 1 column, 2 column, 3 column, 4 column, like that. Okay, and then when it's done with all the columns, the outside for loop will go to first row, then inside loop will go 0 column, 1 column, 2 column. Okay, then outside loop will go, outside for loop will go second row. Okay, so inside for loop will go 0 column, 1 column, like that way. So that means we cannot access all the elements in a two-dimensional array using just one for loop. We have to have two for loops, one for loop inside another for loop. Okay, and so because it needs two indexes. Okay, so just not one. In one-dimensional array we can do the job just by one, but in two-dimensional we have to have two indexes. Okay, so thank you for joining me. If you have questions or comments about the information covered in this presentation, please use the question and comment box located on gogo.com.